What's the worst thing you've ever seen at a party? Story 1. On Halloween night, a group of college students from DePaul had rented a house in an area that was in the process of being revitalized. Unfortunately, their festivities were crashed by some gang members who were asked to leave. One of the members refused to take no for an answer and returned with a gun, resulting in the tragic death of one of the partygoers. The perpetrator was sentenced to 90 years in prison, a devastating outcome that left everyone involved mourning the loss of a young life. Story 2. On the first week of the semester, we were taking care of a freshman girl who had too much to drink. Like so many do. We took her to the bathroom, cracked open the door, and had a couple of her friends post outside to keep her private and listen for any vomiting. After a few minutes, it got quiet. Then all of a sudden, we heard a small, dull clunk, and shortly after, water rushed out into the hallway. Incredibly, she had fallen asleep standing and toppled over, smashing her head into the toilet and breaking it into two pieces. Yet she was completely unharmed. Now she's a graduate, and her singing is absolutely stunning. Story 3. As I was closing down a party a few years back, I noticed a young woman wandering through all the rooms and back again. Her next stop was in the living room, where she proceeded to pick up every single empty beer can and pour it into her glass. Some of them had only a few drops left, others had a few swallows. I was shocked as I watched her, and she must have noticed my reaction as she furrowed her brow and gave me a slight tilt of her head while declaring, "Don't judge me," before continuing on her journey. Story 4. At my ex-girlfriend's birthday party, a drunken reveler caused a ruckus, hitting on people, drinking more, and not giving a damn. People were starting to become unnerved, and he attempted to jump off the balcony twice. My friends and I were able to wrestle him to the ground and keep him from taking the plunge. We told my friends to call 911, and we got him out of the house before the police arrived. 4 officers showed up, and 2 of them chased after him while the other 2 asked us questions. Thankfully, they managed to find him and take him away, much to our relief. Everyone was embarrassed by the incident, but hey, at least the cops had a laugh about the cheap beer we were drinking. Story 5. As I started to make my way out of the house party, I remembered that I had to do something in the kitchen. I opened the door to find a rather unexpected sight. A person was crouching with one foot on the draining board and the other on the counter, and the moment he saw me, his eyes widened in shock. I quickly shut the door and ran up to my room, hoping to erase the image from my mind. Yet, every time I turn on a light in a kitchen, I'm reminded of the same stare from over the sink. Story 6. My friends and I love pulling pranks on each other, especially Steve. At one of our get-togethers, we decided to add a sneaky twist to the usual party mix. We added dry dog food to the bowl without Steve knowing. Sure enough, he started munching away and only stopped when he noticed that the cashews were the only thing he was eating. After realizing the food was dog food, Steve was not impressed. Another time, one of my friends had the brilliant idea of making a roast beef sandwich out of wet dog food. We placed it on a plate, cut it into 4 slices, and even added little toothpicks to make it look more authentic. We tried to present it to Steve, but couldn't contain our laughter. It was obvious to him that it was dog food, and it didn't help that it looked like a sandwich made of it. Needless to say, Steve was not amused. Story 7. The woman and her husband had lovingly prepared for their daughter's birthday celebration at the local park. Homemade treats, balloons everywhere, and games for the kids. Despite all their efforts, not a single person showed up. It was heartbreaking to watch. Passerby could not help but stare at the forlorn birthday party with no guests. Fortunately, the young birthday girl was too young to understand what had happened. Nevertheless, it was a lesson that not sending out evites with only regrets and not following up can have devastating consequences. On the bright side, the woman is an excellent cook, and she brought some of her treats to the office, much to everyone's delight. Story 8. At a party on a small island in a tranquil lake, disaster struck when someone lost their glasses. In a fit of desperation, they decided to tip over a tiki torch to help them find them, which resulted in the fluid spilling out and igniting some nearby brush. The fire quickly spread, and the person, in a bid to put it out, ran to the opposite end of the island, inadvertently setting themselves on fire. I watched in horror from a boat as the blazing figures raced towards the water, with the whole island starting to catch alight behind them. Fortunately, everyone was able to jump into the water and swim to safety. Sadly, the island was destroyed by the fire, but thankfully, no one was seriously injured. Story 9. It was New Year's and my sister was throwing a party. We had this little reflecting pool, not more than a foot deep, that lay in the direct path from the front door to the front gate. I was out front with some friends, and we saw this girl come out of the front door, storming down the stairs. She didn't even look where she was going, and before we could stop her, she had stumbled right into our little pool and ended up face-planting in the water. Her boyfriend followed right after her, and the look on his face was one of utter horror. She got up and stomped off to the car, and he meekly followed after her as if he were going to his own execution. It was without a doubt the most hilarious thing I've ever seen at a party. Story 10. As soon as the people arrived at the party hosted by my friend, the homeowner, he decided to break out the gem clear. We all took some shots, and it was awful. Suddenly, he declared, "I think this would be much better warm," and proceeded to pour some into a spoon and heat it up with a lighter. Inebriated as we were, we found this hilarious, until he dropped a spoonful of jet fuel on this carpet. In a panic, he also kicked over the rest of the bottle, and within minutes, the house was in flames. What is the irony of it all? It was a housewarming party, as he had just built the place. Story 11. At a friend's party, someone asked her to bring out her ferret so they could get better acquainted. When she did, all the guests saw something was wrong as the poor creature simply lay there, unresponsive and disoriented. It was then that they realized the ferret was having a stroke. With the festivities put on hold, the hostess quickly rushed the animal off to the vet, leaving the stung guests in her wake. Story 12. I was horrified when I spotted a guy at a house party trying to drug a girl's drink. My friend and I immediately sprang into action, tossing the drink out and ejecting the perpetrator from the party. After we made sure the girl was safe, she was relieved that her drink hadn't been tampered with. Story 13. We used to have some wild nights in southwest Pennsylvania, but the one time we played a show in Morgantown, West Virginia, really stands out. The bar gave us free drinks, but I had to be the designated driver since I was the one who drove the equipment up. When we were done playing, the band invited us back to their house for an after-party. Unfortunately, one of our friends got too drunk and started hitting on the singer's sister. We decided to call it a night and start heading back home. But on the way down Interstate 79, my friend rolled down the window and puked, covering the car behind us and the entire driver's side of my truck. I was so mad. The next day I parked my car in the sun, and once it had baked for a few hours, I drove it to my friend's house and made him clean off all the sun-dried vomit. Story 14. I was at an 18th birthday bash when I was just 17. It was a huge party with the house jam-packed. The dad and uncles were carefully checking the guest list to make sure no gate crashers got in. But then some people showed up, tried to fight the dad, and were thrown out. A few hours later, I saw the dad being dragged inside by his wife. There was blood everywhere, and he was completely dazed. His biggest uncle was walking after him, also bleeding, with a very visible knife wound in his back. It turned out the gatecrashers had come back with 12 people and weapons, including knives and bats. They had proceeded to beat and stab the father and the uncle of the host. The police were called and arrived soon after. Story 15. The night turned out all right in the end, but I'll never forget the insane stoned biker guy crashing through the gates in a stolen car. I was chatting with a lovely young lady who, unbeknownst to me at the time, would later become my girlfriend for a few years. We were sitting on a sofa on the driveway of a squatted house next to a bonfire, with people milling around us. My friend, who I had come to party with, was laying drunk on the ground between the sofa and the bonfire and appeared to only need a quick nap. Suddenly, a very drunk and stoned biker guy was refused entry to the party, and as if to make a point, he returned shortly after in a stolen car, crashing through the gates at a high speed and into the crowds. Everyone scattered in a panic, and the biker guy made his escape. It was only then that we noticed my friend, who was now trapped underneath the car. We quickly pulled him out, and to our amazement, he was unscathed. Miraculously, his drunken state had saved him from any real harm. The police arrived by this point and were none too pleased.